Okay, so in this section, we're gonna be looking at exposure and exposure lock, okay? This is also the same for focus, but right now the focus is on exposure. So whenever you're looking at something, it's gonna intelligently look at the whole scene and try to get the best exposure. But if you wanna make sure something's exposed in the image, you can tap on it on the screen and it's gonna raise the brightness or lower the brightness so that that thing has good exposure, meaning the level of brightness so that that's lit up perfectly. So right now I'm looking at this and we have the wall being very bright, the floor being in the shadow, and then this thing that you pay for, parking, being the darkest part. So if I click on the wall, the bright spot in the wall, it makes the image darker so that the wall is a little bit darker. And it darkens everything else. If I press on the floor, it makes everything brighter because the floor is too dark. If I press on this paint thing, it makes, based on what parts I press, it makes things brighter or darker. If I press on right here in that white part, it makes everything darker, and so on. So right now we're gonna look at the difference between pressing on the floor and the wall. You have to make a determinant of what you want the exposure to be. Exposed for the wall or the floor. Now if you want to adjust the exposure manually, what you do is you pick on a part, like let's say the floor, and then you hold it and drag up and down. Dragging up makes the picture brighter, dragging down makes it darker. Now, let's say you do want the exposure to be on the floor, right? And as you move around, it loses the exposure on the floor. So you can lock the floor's exposure by doing something called exposure lock. To do that, you hold on the floor and then you'll see AE/AF lock. So what that does is it makes sure that as I move it around, it doesn't get brighter or darker anymore. It's locked. Now, it also locks the position of the focus. So it's focused on that spot right there. So that is a tool that's gonna help you so it doesn't get brighter and darker once you pick the right exposure. You just hold it and lock it in place. So that's it when it comes to locking the exposure and messing with exposure. Now we're gonna move on to the next section.